and we can get started. So thank you guys for being here for our May installment of our Michigan Humane Communities program that we've been working on. For anybody who is unaware of what we're doing here, we are trying to have a couple, or every month we're trying to have some presentations for our volunteers to join to talk about ways that we can create a more humane community. This is a huge thing that we are trying to implement a lot more at Michigan Humane, so that we can make sure that our communities are welcome and opening up for people to have more access to animal related care, anything that helps keep animals in their homes instead of coming into the shelter. So we're talking about ways that volunteers can help be a part of that mission for us. If you are not used to joining these with us, if you're new to this, we do also have a punch card that volunteers can keep track of for themselves. If you would like us to punch it or something, we'd be more than happy to, but it's on an honor system, so you can do that yourself, and just keeping track of how many of these you've attended, as well as maybe listen to afterward, so that we can reward you for being a part of this at the end of the year. So please keep track of all of these that you're joining us with. And it's going to be Jennifer Rosen and I talking today. Jen is our volunteer manager, if you have not met her yet. And I am one of our volunteer coordinators, Ashley Ray, and we'll both be chatting with you guys today. All right. So what we're talking about today, how to be a representative for Michigan Humane. And we know that volunteers are representatives for us in huge ways in and out of the shelter. So some of the things that we want to talk about with you today, what we are focused on at Michigan Humane, what are some things that we stand for, some of the things that we want to make sure the community knows about what we do, as well as a lot of the services and things that we have available that maybe people don't know that we have. You guys are a great way to share those resources with other people. So we're going to talk about some of those and how you can help. We also are going to talk about why we need representatives in our community. We can't do it all ourselves, and you guys are an extension of us, and you're able to help us with that. And then how you can personally represent animals. So does not necessarily need to be in attachment to Michigan Humane. Any animals out there, we want to provide you with the ability to support them and support the people who care for them in any way. It does not have to be through us. We're all working toward the same goal at any shelter or rescue that is out there, just to make sure that these animals and people are properly cared for. So we want to talk about how you can do that as well. And just to give you guys an overview of some of the things that we believe here at Michigan Humane. So our mission is to improve and save lives through compassionate care, community engagement, and advocacy for animals. And one of the things that was told to me when I first started working for Michigan Humane was, you'll notice that advocacy for animals is at the end of this. And a lot of this other stuff has to come in order for us to care for the animals. So compassionate care for humans that have those animals, engaging with the community and creating a safe space for them to care for their animals and ask questions has to come along with caring for animals, or else we can't do the work that we need to do. Go ahead, Jen. Oh, can you?
Thanks.
There you go.
Sorry, I was struggling with the mute button there for a minute. So next, we want to talk about our vision. So our mission statement, right? That is what we do. That's what Michigan Humane believes in. That's the work that we're going to do every day. But how do we get there? So that's our vision. And our vision has changed a little bit over the years. And kind of during the pandemic, we've made this really strong commitment to make Metro Detroit the most humane community in America by 2030. So what that means, a lot of the decisions that we're making in the organization, the events that we choose to do, where we put our resources are happening because we are working towards this goal, which is making Detroit a more humane community. When we have done our work and when we've looked at all the stats and where animals were coming in and where resources were being used, we found that most of the resources were being used and had the greatest need in our community was in the city of Detroit. So that's where we're really focusing our efforts right now. And we hope that you guys will join us along the road in this journey to making Detroit a more safe space for our pets and for the people who live there. So I just wanted to share this fun little picture. If you volunteer at our Mackey Center for Animal Care, you probably had the pleasure of seeing the mural that's been painted on the Adoption Center wall there, which kind of is what we envision. We want to see neighborhoods that have pet-friendly spaces. We want to see more pets in the community. So that's kind of what this represents, this picture here. So this is on our Humane Communities webpage, which is a little bit separate from our Michigan Humane portal. So we'll actually share that out after this Zoom meeting today. So if you'd like to take a look and see what our goals are and how it's broken down a little bit more, you can look through those. So the big takeaways are, we know that pets equal safer communities, safer neighborhoods. Pets also equal better and healthier families and people, and then also can create more of a thriving economy, open up more opportunities for jobs and spaces. So those are three of our main goals when we're talking about humane communities and making Detroit the most humane community it can possibly be. So when we talk about our community and our community members, who exactly are those people? So when I think about that, I think that it really is encompassing of a lot of different people. First and foremost, it's current pet owners, right? Those are the folks that already have animals in their home. They're looking for services. They may need our help in some way. They are the people that are taking care of animals and are going to be looking for different resources and ways to be able to be happy pet owners. Next, I think our community is made up of future pet owners. That's what is really important. We never know who is going to become a pet owner in the future or how they're going to interact with animals. So basically, every time we're having a conversation with a person, we're kind of envisioning them as this could be a potential pet owner in the future. And so we're going to shape our conversations around that and resources and services that they might need. Also, rescues and other shelters make up our community too. So something Michigan Humane really prides ourselves in is being we're not trying to solve all the problems in the animal welfare community alone. We know that it really takes an army, a group of people to be able to do that. So we need to find ways to work together with our friends who are doing this work and not work against them. So whenever we can, we're looking for different ways to be able to partner together to serve more animals. And then finally, I kind of touched on this a little bit already, but anyone and everyone who can encounter an animal is a part of our community. Animals are out there, right? If we think and take a look around, even though we may not own an animal, we may have a neighbor who does, or a family member who does. We may encounter a stray animal at some point in our life. Maybe we aren't, but maybe someone in our neighborhood is, and they're not sure what route to take when they come across that lost pet. Our children, right? There's children in our communities, in our school. We want to make sure that the future youth know how to interact and are advocates for animals. It's really important to start working on education and speaking to them now so they're prepared to be future pet owners. And then, of course, we never know who is going to be a future volunteer, a future donor, or a potential advocate. So anytime I'm speaking with a member of the public, those are things that are on my mind. This is a potential opportunity to make a connection, to start a relationship, and that is going to equal good things for animals.
So one of the things that Michigan Humane prides himself on, and one of the things that we have been trying to really show you guys, is how we can improve community support. We are the oldest and largest shelter in Michigan. We have a lot of opportunities, and we've had a lot of opportunities to reach a lot of people and provide a lot of services. So some of the things that people may be coming to us for from the community, or what they are looking for assistance with, obviously adoption, that's one of the things at the forefront of our mind. We want all those animals adopted, and they may be coming with that purpose in mind. They may also be coming to us with surrender or rehoming needs. So that could be at the shelter, or I know some of you have seen in our Facebook groups or other Facebook groups coming to different rescue groups and shelter groups to help rehome an animal, finding it something better. Maybe something hasn't worked out in their personal life and they need something different. And it is super important in any of these ways that they may be approaching us to support those people in whatever that they're needing. The biggest thing that we try to do is to not pass judgment. We're just here to help. So whatever it is that we can do to help, sometimes it is providing education in a certain situation, or maybe it's just saying, okay, this is your personal situation and we're just going to help this animal regardless. It's up to us to make sure that we're providing that for people. They may be looking for veterinary care. If you've been at our shelters, you've seen that we have clinics at our Detroit and Berman shelter, as well as out at our Livingston location or our Rochester Hills location, but not just at our locations. We also have them at our One Health events. And if you have assisted us with the One Health event, you notice that those people are super grateful. They're really happy to have this opportunity for low-cost vet care so that they can properly care for their animal because they do love them. They may be coming to us for pet food or supplies, as you can see in our photo here at one of our more recent One Health events, providing that for the community. If all it takes is for a bag of dog food to keep that animal in a loving home, we want to be able to provide that for them. It could also be supplies. Sometimes we have leashes or we have different donations from the community that can help better make sure that they're taking care of their animal. If we can provide it, we want to make sure that we can provide it. Again, whatever we can do, as simple as a leash, to keep that animal in a place that loves them. Education, like we're providing for you guys right now, but people might be looking for that. And it might just be as simple as a question coming up to the front desk at an adoption center and saying, do you have any resources of who I can talk to about my dog mouthing? I'm having a hard time with it. And we may be able to provide something on the spot, or we may be able to provide a resource that they can go to right after. Or it could be, medical education or proper veterinary care that they need to do from home, like heartworm treatment or something like that. Again, trying not to pass judgment as much as possible and just providing the information. They're coming to us, so they do want it. And if they can provide it, I'm sure they will. Helping in a time of crisis. I hope, maybe not, that you guys haven't had to come into contact with this very often, but I'm sure if you are at the shelter on a regular basis, you've probably heard people coming in upset that maybe their dog got injured or they found an injured animal, or they're worried that they may have to euthanize their animal or something along those lines. Bless our staff that work in those areas on a regular basis and have to kind of endure a lot of those emotional situations. But that is actually really a really good way of measuring how much people care and how much they trust us to help them, is by coming to us in a vulnerable time and asking for assistance. And it is up to us to make sure that we are caring people and providing them that love and support that they need during these hard times. Even when it seems like maybe they're taking a lot of the pain out on us or something like that. Obviously, within reason, we need to make sure that we are protecting ourselves. But, sometimes it's okay that they are feeling really emotional. It is an emotional thing. If anyone's ever had to deal with that sort of situation, you've probably felt pretty emotional. But we want to be those people who can help. And then validation. Sometimes people just are looking for someone to say, I care too. I've had lots of people just coming in and talking to me or talking to other staff members and just wanting to hear that other people care about animals like them. Other people feel really strongly about veterinary care that they give for their animals. Sometimes they just want to talk to somebody and feel like they're doing the right thing. And we can also be those people for them.
Actually, can I add something really quickly?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
So you mentioned, they're trusting, community members are trusting us and coming to us for support. And I think that's something that we're always working on and have been working on extremely hard recently is shelters aren't always necessarily have been trusted in the history. Sometimes people assume that shelters are very scary or negative places and that they're bad places for animals to be. And while it's true, shelter shouldn't be a long-term place for an animal, we can provide a lot of resources. But I still think that there are some folks out there that have a negative perception of shelters and they're afraid. So one thing we do as an organization is trying to get the word out and through these community events, break down those barriers and say, we are here. We are a friend. We never want to take an animal. We want to help figure out ways to keep pets in your home. So the trust doesn't just naturally come. That's something that has to be worked on through building these relationships, and why being a representative and knowing about the work that we do and the resources that we can offer is so, so very important, because every time we have a conversation, it's an opportunity to build up that trust and know that this person is going to feel safe and be able to ask for help rather than struggling alone in a time of need. So shelter diversion, I want to take some time to talk about this because this is, while it's something we've always done at Michigan Humane, I think shelters always do, I think we are working on this harder than we ever have before. And basically what this term means is that we are trying to keep pets from coming into our shelters as much as we possibly can. And the reason for that is because shelters really should be a temporary place. While they are great and we can offer a lot of resources and we can do great care for animal. I mean, when we talk about medical needs, I mean, there isn't much we can't do for an animal anymore. We are treating far more things than we ever did when I started at the organization 12 years ago. Eye removals, leg amputations, spay and neuter, heartworm treatment. It is rare that we say, you know what, we're not going to be able to care for an animal when it comes to medical needs. And as we continue to treat more animals, that means more animals are staying in our care longer, because it takes time to get them to where they need to be ready for adoption. And in years past, long time ago, when animals came in with illnesses, a lot of times the only option for them was euthanasia. And so these animals that we're seeing sometimes now with treatable conditions weren't animals that were adoption candidates years before. And something else that's changed in the shelter environment is 4 years ago, we really made an investment as an organization to create a behavior team. So a team of individuals whose sole purpose in the organization is to figure out how we can not only meet the physical needs of an animal, but the mental needs, right? Taking care of their mental health as well while they're in care. So now what we're seeing in our shelters is not only animals that have medical needs that may take up to, you know, a couple of days to 2 weeks to 2 months to several months of care, but we're seeing that on the behavior side too. So just like we used to have to euthanize for medical reasons, oftentimes dogs that are up for adoption now with several different special waivers or information that we're trying to make an adopter aware of, or a behavior team are working on, these are dogs that would not have been up for adoption even maybe 5 years ago within this organization. A lot of the shift had happened during the pandemic, when we were really able to kind of take a look at what we wanted to do and how we needed to focus on saving more animals. So saving animals is happening, and it's happening so well that it's actually starting to create situations in shelters where we're sitting at capacity a lot more than we ever did before. So when we treat more animals, it means we're going to have more difficult animals to adopt out. We always knew older animals might take a little bit longer, right? Because they have more medical needs. But now even young animals are sitting on the adoption floors with significant medical needs or behavioral needs. And that means it takes more work for our team to find that right home, to find the person who understands what it's going to take to manage this behavior or manage this medical condition. So not only understand it, but have the financial needs to do that as well. Or just the resources. Sometimes it's not money, but it's just having the time and the space to be able to do it and the willingness to learn. And what we find are a lot of people are willing, but maybe they don't always have the resources or the tools they need once they take the animals home. So more difficult placements, it's not a bad thing because we're saving more animals, but it takes longer to find those animals' homes. So the next question that comes up is, what if it takes a really long time to find that animal a home? What if that perfect home never comes? And I think that's what we're experiencing right now at the shelters. Again, shelters are at capacity during times of the year when we never saw that before. Winter typically was the slow period for us. We wouldn't see a lot of cats in care, and even dog populations would go down in the shelters. I would say summer of 2021, we experienced something I've never experienced in my 12 years at Michigan Humane before. We never saw the slowdown. We saw dog kennels filled almost to capacity the entire year, summer and winter. We never got that relief, and it's a new problem that we are trying to solve for. What happens when shelters are at capacity and every day you're not sure if you're going to have an empty kennel? Well, lots of things. One, we may not be able to take in as many animals as we want to, because if someone comes to us and they need help with surrendering, and for a good reason, which many people do, if we don't have an actual kennel to put that dog in, how can we help that person? We can. So sometimes we're forced to turn them away when we really don't want to. We wish we could take that animal in. So that's something we're struggling with right now, is trying to find out how do we make sure the shelter kennels aren't staying at capacity all the time, because that may hinder our ability to be able to help owners who may need to surrender. The other thing that happens when shelters stay at capacity for a long period of time is we're going to see increased kennel decline with our dogs. And so kennel decline, if you're not familiar with that term, is when an animal is in care for a long period of time and it starts to negatively affect their mental health. And we start seeing behaviors, not necessarily bad behaviors, but behaviors that are difficult to manage. So we might see higher levels of arousal, so overstimulation in the kennel, pacing, panting, chronic boredom and frustration. They might start struggling with barrier reactivity, so barking and growling at people who pass the kennel, whether that's animals or people. We might see that they start having issues with jumping up or mouthing more, and they never had those things before. The confinement that they're experiencing at the shelter starts to wear on their mental well-being. And we have always in the past done a really good job of making sure we have plans in place to keep kennel decline at bay, such as in-kennel enrichment. So some volunteers, you may already know this and help with this, but making those foraging bags, or the toilet paper tubes, or Kongs, or the music, or the scents that we do. And of course, our Positive Start volunteers here are huge. They're taking animals out of kennels or visiting them for cats in the cages to make sure that they're mentally well. And we're still doing all those things, but kennel decline is still on the rise because animals are just staying in the shelter, dogs specifically, longer than they ever have before. And so that's kind of doing something to their mental well-being. And so this is currently a problem that the organization, and not just Michigan Humane, but organizations, animal welfare organizations and shelters across the United States are struggling with. This is something new that has started to come into play since the pandemic. This is not something we were experiencing prior to. The other part about, maybe not finding that home as quickly as we'd like is there's going to be limited or strained resources. And that's actually kind of also directing the organization right now into some of the decisions we make. Our resources are definitely not infinite. I know we are very lucky and fortunate to be a larger organization. We have a wide scope. We have things that many other organizations or rescue groups would dream of having. But that still doesn't mean our resources can handle everything. We still have limits. We only have a certain number of staff that we're able to work with. Again, like when the kennels are full, they're full. There isn't another place to put an animal. When we, talk about staff time, of course, we want to do everything we possibly can to make the stay for the animals as best as we possibly can, but there are only so many hours in the day. So that's kind of an example of how we've been looking at staff and building hours, and have started to make some of those adjustments, which we'll be having a meeting in the upcoming weeks to talk about that and why we're shifting to 10-hour days and starting to look at changing some of the hours to the public. So you'll start to see that happening. We're trying to solve for these problems that are happening right now, real time, that we didn't have to solve for before. So know that it's not always the fact that we don't want to take an animal in because we can't rehome it. We most certainly can. But if an animal is in care for a longer period of time and they start declining, or we don't have enough hands or resources to take care of them and do it well, we're doing a disservice to the animal. So that's why shelter diversion is so important. Because if those animals are coming in and we can't give them what they need, it actually ends up doing a disservice to those animals. So community resources will help prevent surrender. we can't just have animals continuously come in without trying to solve the problem at the source. So that's actually what our organization is trying to do now, is how do we meet pet owners where they're at and give them the resources they need? Because sometimes animals don't really need to come to a shelter. There are times when they can stay in a home. It's just someone is maybe lacking regular pet food because they've lost their job, or they aren't making as much as because they had to choose a new career, or they've had to move and downsize, right? Things are really expensive right now. None of us are immune to it. And just because an animal that you've loved for years is costing you more money right now doesn't mean you should have to give up that pet. So we're working really, really hard to make sure that people have what they need so their pets can stay in their homes, the families they love, and they don't have to come into a shelter and risk kennel decline or waiting months to find that perfect adopter.
Jen, I'm just going to jump on and add a little bit to that too. When we talk about community resources, that is kind of what this overarching theme of humane communities is all about, is us trying to create those more pet friendly spaces. So later this year, you guys will hear even more about that in some of our other humane communities virtuals that we're doing, where we're talking about advocacy work that we're doing to make sure that certain breeds cannot be restricted in different homes, so that they don't have to be surrendered by those different rules that may be coming about. Making sure that housing allows animals to be allowed in apartments and things like that, that maybe more people are now encountering. Because just like Jen said, just because you love your animal and suddenly something changes, you move from a house to an apartment or something like that, it should not mean that you should have to jeopardize your animal or surrender your animal. So there's a lot of other things besides just giving food or just giving leashes or giving redirection to something. There's a lot of other things that are happening behind the scenes that we're trying to create these spaces to be safe for people to keep their animals in their homes. Again, just not sending them to the shelter because of inconvenience that they've reached in their life.
So next, I want to talk a little bit about our open adoption process and why Michigan Humane operates with that model. You may be familiar with this term, you may not, but open adoptions is something our organization has done almost the entire time I've been with Michigan Humane. There's been a few changes here or there, but really what an open adoption process means is that, we want to have conversations with folks when they're looking to adopt. We try to remove barriers that might exist to pet ownership, because we know the best way for animals to have their shot at finding that home is to make sure we make them accessible and make them accessible to as many people as possible, because there are so many animals that need a very specific home. And so when we put in these barriers, it may prevent pets from getting to homes. And really, we believe that pets are for everyone. You don't have to work at a certain place, make a certain dollar amount, have grown up in a certain community. I think some folks are really lucky in the fact that pets have always been a part of their life, and they've maybe always had access to veterinary care. My background, I grew up in a poor neighborhood in the city of Detroit. All of our animals were stray animals that we found on the streets, and we knew, like, okay, street, not great, house, it's a better place for them to be. So we would kind of adopt them into our lifestyle. We did not always have money for veterinary care unless an animal was truly sick. So many of my pets were not vaccinated. And in fact, some of them were not spayed and neutered until very much later in their lives. So when I started at Michigan Humane, there was a lot that I learned. And now that I'm privileged enough to have money to be able to afford veterinary care and have access to different resources. My pets live a different lifestyle than when I was growing up, but I wouldn't change a thing. They made a huge and positive impact in my life. And I believe that just really everyone deserves to have that. They are a source of love. They got me through some really, really tough times during my childhood. So I just can't imagine life without them. There is actually no proven correlation between income and the quality of love and care that people give. So that's another thing when we talk about open adoptions and we have conversations with people, that we need to constantly remind ourselves and remember. Just because someone may do something differently or practice pet ownership a little bit differently than you do, doesn't mean that they don't significantly care for their animals. And in fact, when we send our team out to do some work in the communities and talk to folks, we find out that a lot of people will actually forgo eating themselves to be able to feed pets, to feed their animals. They may choose to stay in houses that aren't safe housing conditions because they want to make sure that there is a roof over them and their animals' heads. So we see some really tough situations in the city of Detroit, and our community solutions team is working very, very hard to keep these families together and provide them the resources that they need. And not only for their pets either. We try to make them, or try to give them connections to human resources too, whenever we possibly can. So again, open adoptions is essentially making sure you're having conversation-based adoption counseling. It's not just directing someone to a form and having them fill out their information and then basing, whether they're approved or declined to adopt based on the information they wrote on a sheet of paper. Pieces of paper really don't tell us very much. Actually, opening up and asking questions put people at ease, we found at our organization, and plenty of studies have been done to show that this is the case. The more invasive screening process you have, the less information you're going to get from people, and it's hard to make good matches. When you remove invasive screening processes like calling and referencing a veterinarian to see how often or the last time someone was at their vet's to get their animal care, it actually increases the likelihood that you're going to have a better understanding of that person's lifestyle and what they're looking for in a pet. So you as an adoption counselor can make a stronger match. So questions our adoption counselors might ask are, tell us a little bit about what you're looking for in a pet today. We're kind of trying to get an idea of their activity level, not the animals and not what they're expecting for an animal, but them. What do they like to do on a daily basis? Do they work 10 hours a day and come home and loaf around on the couch? Nothing wrong with that. But if that's what they like to do, then we kind of want to try to match them up with a dog that might appreciate that lifestyle too. What are their deal breakers? Are there things they cannot absolutely tolerate? If we get those things out in the open right at the beginning, we can kind of help point them in the direction of a dog that might, or cat that might fit their needs. So anytime, again, I started this organization actually doing adoptions and doing animal care. So one of my favorite things to do was really try to get those customers to open up and tell me. And sometimes they would come in looking for a very specific animal, but once I went through all the questions that I was going to ask them to understand how long they've been looking, what they were looking for, what their deal breakers were, what their understanding of veterinary care was, and how much they were willing to take on as far as medical needs were for a pet, I would kind of point them into a direction of an animal that I thought would be a good fit. And I would say, don't just meet one. I know you came in for Fluffy, but can I please show you Lucy over here? And also just to get some perspective of what it looks like, here's George, who's a super high active dog, and would encourage them to take them out for a walk or sit with them in the playroom and show them some of the tricks that I knew. The more that we do that, the more it helps that person in the moment learn what's right for them. And so that's what we try to do. And when we talk about open adoptions, that's it. We want to just remove those barriers that would prevent someone. I can't tell you how many times I had people who came in to adopt an animal, and when they found out we didn't have a requirement that they had to have a fenced-in yard to have a dog, they were just like, oh my gosh, you have no idea what this means to me. I've been to 6 other places and none of them would allow me to adopt because I don't have a fence. I live in Rochester Hills. I can't have a fence. It's not allowed in my community. So they weren't allowed to adopt an animal based on regulations in their community, and they were wonderful pet owners. I had folks come in, same thing. They weren't allowed to look at any of their dogs because they had to, they couldn't live with children under a certain age, and there was no wiggle room on that. So one thing Michigan Humane prides themselves on is, even though we give recommendations and we try to guide adopters, we still don't say that we know what's best and going to work in their home. So if someone has children or their dog, we will actually recommend meet and greets and bring them on site to be able to do those things and watch that process and kind of talk through what we're seeing. We always try to set an adopter up for success. We kind of let them know what potential hiccups or bumps could be down the road once they take an animal home, and give them resources if things do get wrong. One of them is just simply calling us. Just please call us if you have any challenges once you get your pet home. Maybe we can hook you up with one of our behavior team members and they can talk about it. Or it's getting them an appointment with our vet center. So we offer all of our adopters a free wellness check, so they get a free exam. They still would have to pay for any medications or any additional testing that would need to happen, but within the first 10 days of adoption. And the reason we do that is because we know sometimes animals get sick after we send them home, and that's a challenge. Sometimes that could be meaning that someone would need to bring back a pet because they were not prepared to spend, and I'm not kidding you, $2,000 within the first week of taking an animal home because their dog got kennel cough or their cat had a heart murmur that we didn't see or needed dental care. I mean, we do our best to know as much as we possibly can about these animals, but things come up with adopted pets that even the shelter can't predict, even on our best day. And that shouldn't be a reason that a pet comes back. So that's why we offer that. We also offer a discount at our veterinary centers for the first year after adoption. We also encourage people to take advantage of pet insurance through one of our partners, the Dodo. Through the Fetch pet insurance, because we again want to put as many of those things in place as we possibly can to make sure we're setting that adopter up for success. And the last thing I want to say is sometimes returns are necessary. I know it can seem like a really negative thing if someone needs to take an animal and bring it back, because we feel like that's really stressful for the animal. But let me tell you, in fact, most of the animals actually probably really enjoy their little vacation from the shelter. Because it's a break from their noisy kennel neighbors or their smelly kitties who are always messing up the litter box next to them. And they get out of this environment that can be really stressful, right? A shelter is a lot of unknowns for a lot of pets, where a home environment is a more relaxed setting. So that is a little vacation. That's one way I kind of thought about it when I was having animals come back, when I did an adoption and it didn't work out. But the other reason is, a lot of times we can make guesses about what we think a pet is going to be like in a home and how they might interact with other animals. And sometimes people do every single thing right when they take a pet home and it still doesn't work out. We can't always predict how those animals are going to work out together or how an animal is going to respond in their environment. And the only way to give the animal a shot and to try is to let it be adopted and see how it works out. I have been proven many times, more than 10 times, so more than on my hands that I can count, when I thought, I don't know if this is going to be a good fit. And that adopter took that dog home or that cat home because they felt really confident, like, no, I really want to give this a shot. They had a great conversation with me and I said, you know what? Try. I'd rather this animal try than sit here in a cage. And I was wrong. And those people sent pictures and, came back to the shelter to show me their animals. And it was this beautiful experience. If I had just said, nope, sticking with my gut, it's not a good fit, and turned them away and declined them, that animal would have lost their opportunity to have a loving home. So we are not the judge and jury here. We are counselors. We are trying to understand their situation and make the best recommendations and guide. We are not necessarily going to decline people because they may not do something the exact way that I do it as a pet owner.
And I'd just like to add something to the returns and why we are kind of talking about that specifically. It's super duper important for us to be the space that people feel like they can come back to when they may feel like they're failing. They should be able to return to us and bring that animal back and not feel like they're going to be judged harshly or, really like looked at differently just because something didn't work out. We want them to return to us and think that, they're going to be understanding. These people know what they're doing. They were super nice to me when I adopted the animal. I'm sure they'll be super nice when I come back. I've had nothing but good experiences with Michigan Humane. And I trust that this is going to work out. So it's really, really important that we, again, make sure that we are the people that they feel comfortable and they trust to be able to do these things that are difficult for people. Nobody really adopts an animal hoping that it's going to go poorly. And that's probably a really painful touch point for anybody. I've been at the intake desk where someone showed up and I wasn't prepared because I don't work in that area, and came up to me and told me that they suddenly were diagnosed with cancer and could not have this animal anymore, and she was in tears. And so I think more often than not, it's not something that anyone is really planning to do when they come to adopt an animal, but it's our job to be that welcoming, caring space to make sure that they feel like they're doing the right thing when they have to. So humane education. So this is a super important thing that we need to make sure that we can provide people. And we don't mean education as we're going to tell you the right way to do things. And we're going to make sure that you listen to what we say. We mean humane education, again, by creating a safe space where people are willing to learn. As a previous teacher, that is a huge thing. Children can't learn in a space where they don't feel comfortable and feel cared about. Same thing goes for adults. They're just big kids and they need to feel cared about and cared for in order to want to hear the information that you're trying to give them. Our field services team knows this very well. They approach tough situations often with kindness, and making sure that people feel cared about so that those things can get through to them when they do have to provide them with information. So one of the things that goes hand in hand with our open adoption policy is we can't keep pets from people. If people want pets, they're going to be able to find them. You can probably do a quick Google search of free puppies and be able to find what you're looking for pretty quickly. So there's no way for us to control that if they leave here denied with an animal that they're going to go anywhere else. So the best that we can do is provide as much education as we can when we do these adoption counseling situations with them. Like Jen talked about, just finding out what their life is about and hopefully setting them up. If they come in and we say, nope, you're not what we're looking for, and we turn them away, they can go somewhere else. It'll be really probably super easy for them to get what they're looking for in a place that maybe won't provide all of these resources that we can provide them. And we can have these conversations and give compassion. I know it can be difficult, especially with everything you see on the internet, of poor situations with humans, things that you hear from our own team when we share some hard situations that we've come across with animals being on the highway or being abandoned or something like that. It can start to cloud how you feel about humans and how you feel about giving up these animals that you care about deeply to strangers. But we can have these conversations with compassion and realize that those are not the majority. The majority are people who do care. They're coming to the Humane Society. They're coming to a place that has animals that have greater care instead of going to a breeder or going to that free puppy, event that they could have gone to. Instead, they're coming to us. So we need to make sure that we are providing that care for them. We can also talk to them about how to invest in, or we can talk to people and invest in our future pet owners and generations. Talking to kids, obviously, is something that easily comes to mind, but I've come across plenty of adults who have never had a pet before. If you've been to any of our One Health events, I've heard a lot of people come up and go, this is my first pet and I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I'm so glad you guys have this service for me, and that you have all these resources. I had no idea. And that's one of the easy ways that we can let people know that these services are accessible to them. And then offering resources for those who have less, like we mentioned. We have our pet food pantry. If you have not gotten a chance to help with pet food distribution, I suggest, if you can and are able, definitely test that out. That's a great way for us to provide education. People ask questions. They just want to talk about their pets at home, and they're really, really grateful and thankful for the stuff that we are able to give them. And they are like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go tell all my friends. I didn't know that you guys had this service. And it's always so rewarding. And then, of course, we always want to make sure that we're leading with kindness. And this goes with obviously members of the community, but anyone that we're working with as well. Your fellow volunteers, your fellow staff members. You may be the person with the most experience at your shelter when it comes to volunteering, and being able to support each other is going to help them want to be a bigger part of this whole vision that we have as well. If you are providing education for your fellow volunteer and you're showing them that, oh my gosh, there's all these great things that I'm a part of and I absolutely love it. Let me show you how you can get this. Let me show you how you can be a part of this. They're going to want to do that same thing because they're going to feel so welcome, and they're going to feel like, man, I really want to do that too. And thank you to everyone I know on this call, especially you guys that are on here, that I saw those names come through, for those who do that already and make people want to do a lot more. So some of the ways that volunteers can help with our overarching theme of humane communities and supporting those in the community. So you can obviously help at community-focused events. I know many of you have. We mentioned our One Healths a lot. They're not the only thing, but those are our reduced veterinary care for the community. And we often have a lot of different services provided there, but also our adoption events. You're able to serve as a person who can say what this animal is about. You can read through their paperwork and give them information right on the spot of what this animal is looking for in a home, and be able to answer those questions that they have at those events as well. And then, of course, in the shelter, you can answer questions too. I would like to make sure that you all know that you are never required to have to do any adoption counseling type talking to customers. But I know that we have volunteers who do enjoy saying, I walk this dog all the time. This is how she behaves, and kind of talking up their favorite animals at the shelter to any guests, and then helping answer some of those questions if you can. Of course, if you can't, you're more than welcome to direct them to a staff member, walk them up to the front desk. That's extra customer service that you can provide that just feels really good that someone's right there to help push the steps forward and support them. Fostering an animal. This is something that I wanted to mention earlier too, is safety net fostering is one of the huge ways that we can help keep animals out of the shelter. I know you've probably heard us talk about safety net fostering, but if you are unaware, safety net fostering is fostering an animal for people who don't necessarily want to give their animal to us, but they're going through a hardship. Those are directly from recommendations. So they're not like just open to everyone, but you can be a safety net foster and help support that, because just because you had a house fire or you are going through suddenly without housing or something like that, does not mean that you should have to give up your animal, and safety nets can help keep those animals in a home environment while they're going through that hardship. So if you know anybody who wants to foster, but they say, I could never foster, I want to keep everything, safety net fostering is a great way to do that, because hopefully they're going to go back to their owner. But just fostering animals in the shelter, we talked about us being overwhelmed with animals and having no more space. So getting them out of this situation so that they don't have kennel decline and into a comfortable home can be really, really beneficial, even if it's for a short period of time. That can really help them get out and just kind of live a normal animal life for a little while. If you have any questions about fostering, you can reach out to any of us or our foster team. And then donating. So all of our food and litter is donated by Purina. So we're pretty well taken care of in the shelter, but what we do need is other items like our kitten shower items that aren't things that we regularly get donated, food for the community that can be donated, even open bags we can put in our pantries at the shelters for people to come and get those. And just kind of asking what items you think we need the most. Anything from boxes for kittens and moms to sit in to make themselves more comfortable while they're with us, to items that a foster may need, like little bottles for the babies and things like that. So if you're looking for specifics that you think would be beneficial, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to share our list of donations that are needed. And then share adoptable animals on social media. So I know we've been pushing this a little bit more, but just so you guys all know, you are welcome to share any photos with our team as well as on your own social media. So if the animals are available for adoption, they're ready to go home, they're up on the website, please feel free to share them, get the word out, get them shared to people who may have never thought they'd drive all the way to Michigan to get an animal. You never know. And share those, but also send them to our team, because we would love to have those. Sometimes you guys are spending quality time with an animal and you're seeing their true personality come out. And that photo that you take is way different than the one that we took when they first came in and they were terrified. So if we can use those photos, sometimes we can, sometimes we can't, but if we can, we would absolutely love to use them. So please feel free to send those to any member of our team so we can try and get those shared to our media and our behavior team to add to their profiles. So a couple other just points here of how to be a good representative in the community. Wearing your volunteer gear is super important. Shows that you're part of this team, shows that you are right on the same level as staff. You're able to answer questions. You're able to help people. You are a beacon for them to reach out to when we're out at events and doing things. And then even when you're not volunteering, I know some people like to wear it because it starts a conversation of, hey, are you a volunteer? What do you have to do to get started volunteering there? That's an awesome way to do that. Smiling and greeting others whenever you're at the shelter or at an event, just letting them know that you're going to be a friendly person to talk to. Listen to understand. So not a lot of always sharing your own personal things, but just listening. Sometimes people just want to talk about an animal that they had when they were 2 years old that changed their lives, and they come to us to share that because they really know that we're going to be the people who care. We work for a shelter and we work with animals. They know that we care. And we don't always have to have a response to everything. It might be something that we have no idea how to help, but they just want someone to hear them and say, let me get you a staff member and we can try and figure this out. Or here's the call center number and we can try and figure this out. Does not always mean that we have to have an answer right then and there. And of course, come to your volunteer coordinator if you can't help somebody with something and you would like to give them more information. We're happy to help you with that. Find common grounds. Whenever I talk to somebody, I am not the greatest person at small talk, believe it or not. But when I first meet somebody, I usually ask them, what kind of pets do you have at home? I skip right past the kids. I apologize for everybody. I skip right past the kids and I ask them about their pets, because people will talk till the end of time at one of our pet related events about their pets. And just knowing that someone is there to listen to that makes them feel really good. Direct to staff for assistance. Like I said, if you're having a hard time, you can definitely reach out to one of us. And then just remembering our vision, that we are trying to make sure that we are providing humane spaces and trying really hard to push into that 2030, making Detroit a more humane community. And we do that by making ourselves visible and making ourselves accessible. Okay, Jen, I'm just going to stop for a second. We're getting close on time. So if anybody needs to leave in the next few minutes, please feel free. We'll have this recording that you can finish later.
And we thought we were going to finish early. All right. So dealing with tough situations, it can be really difficult to work in animal welfare. The work that we do is really important, and we do it because we care. We care deeply about the animals and the people that we work with. We want them to have the best situation and the best outcome. Sometimes things don't go exactly the way we plan, or the work can feel endless. So I tell folks, remember what keeps me coming back every day to do this work. That's super important, even on the tough days, is that you're never alone. You are not alone. There is a group of people who are going through this as well. It is physically and mentally exhausting to do this work, and we have to celebrate every win. It's so, so important to do that, no matter how small they are, because if we don't take the time to do that, we really focus on all the things that are going wrong, and that can wear you down. Remember that the challenges that we face in animal welfare and at Michigan Humane, they're complex. They're not something that can be solved in a day, sometimes not even weeks or months. These are problems that are going to continue to evolve. We got really good when we started the open adoption process years ago that had just started to take off when I had started, to moving animals up and out of our shelters quickly and into homes that lasted. We've always, as an organization, had pretty low return rates. I know sometimes it feels like a lot because the animals that we love, we can see them come back a couple of times, and that's hard because we want them to find their match the first time, but that's just not how it's going to work. So know that we are constantly working on these challenges, but even when we solve these, there are probably new challenges that are going to take their place. And that's why we do this work. We continue to find ways to make things better for humans and the animals that they care for. Think about why you do this work. Each one of us probably has the reason why behind why we come in and come back every day, what makes us feel good. Find those things that feel good and do those things. Don't focus on the negatives, focus on the work that maybe it's washing dishes every day and you come in and you feel really satisfied when you knock 3 bins of dishes or laundry out, or maybe that's not for you. Coming in the shelter, it's emotionally exhausting because you see the animals in their kennels. So come out and do the events with us instead. That is a different environment. All of that work is super important. None of it is more important than the other. They all contribute to making the end goal happen, and they're all very much needed. So find the things that make you happy and do that work. That's what will be able to help you keep coming back. Ask to speak with your coordinator if something really isn't sitting right with you, or you're really having a difficult time about a decision that was made about an animal, or you felt like an event didn't go the way that you had hoped it would. We're here. We want to know how you're feeling. Sometimes you have a different perspective than we have. So please make sure you reach out to us. We'll set up a meeting. We'll discuss whatever it is that's on your mind. Again, you're not alone. We're here to talk through this. I would be lying if I said every day I went home and it was like, it was a great day. Sometimes it's really hard. And I'll find Ashley and have a conversation with her. Or I know the people that, bring energy back into me when I'm in the workplace. So I'll spend some time with them to make sure I can keep on coming back and feeling good. Find the ways that you like to recharge. Maybe it's not even anything related to this. You do your volunteer shift and it was a difficult day. So maybe you spend some time and set up a lunch date with your friends, or you like to read a book or listen to music. I love to drive to work here and home with the windows down or listening to music. Music makes me feel better. It takes my mind off some things that are really difficult, or things that I wish turned out differently. So everyone has their own ways. You need to try to figure out what that is for you and what makes you feel recharged. And in some cases, it might be good to take a break from volunteering. Staff have to do it too. We have to work really hard to make sure we have healthy boundaries between our work and our personal lives and other things that are important to us. While this work is very, very important to me, I would be here for 12 years if it wasn't. I still need to remember to spend time with my family and to make sure I'm checking in with friends and turning off those work emails after 5 p.m. or on the weekends that I'm not working. It's super healthy for me to do that. If I'm always turned on and I'm always trying to solve the problems, I'm going to get burnt out. I'm going to get worn down. I'm going to struggle with compassion fatigue. These are things that are real. It happens to folks who are working in fields that are giving or caretaker fields, and animal welfare definitely is that. We come here because we want to help animals. We come here because we want to help people. If we are constantly giving and giving and giving and never taking a break, again, it will wear us down. So it's definitely sometimes needed to just take a couple of weeks off, or even a month, and then come back, or maybe take some time away in the summer when we're at capacity in the shelter. Know your limits. That's really important. If you're not sure, or you just want to talk through some of the feelings you might be having, reach out to your volunteer coordinator. We'd be happy to have those conversations with you.
So just to recap, just in general, how you can be a good representative for the work that we do. Whenever you're talking to someone in or out of the shelter, compassion is going to be key. And just making sure that even if you feel like you don't have the compassion in you in that moment, just try not to say too much or take a minute. If just listen, that's totally fine. You don't have to be this big, bubbly, happy person all the time, especially if something did just happen at the shelter that kind of made you bummed out. And then suddenly a guest is asking you a question, but still just being kind and being caring is going to help with that. Open heart and open mind, not expecting that everybody who walks through our door is going to mistreat an animal. They're coming to us. They know the animals that we have. They want to give a shelter animal a home. So more often than not, they're going to be looking for a positive outcome when they come into our shelter. And then knowing that you don't know the whole story as well, we can make quick judgments about how maybe someone pulled up in a type of car or someone is dressed a certain way. That is not a good way to approach things. Thinking that they may not be presenting their actual heart outwards is a better way to look at it. And then just like I said, there's always more to the story that we don't know. So that's where those conversations come in, and making sure that we get to know those people. Maybe they did look a little bit different to us when they first came in, but then we found out that they actually are the most amazing pet owner we've ever met. So taking that time to make sure that we have a bigger open mind about the situation than we might be seeing right away.
And the last thing I want to add, just to circle back around, is remember that every conversation we have with someone is a potential to make a positive relationship, to change their mind about how they interact or engage with animals or feel about the community work that we do. So no conversation is too small. It is an opportunity to start a relationship and a conversation. So people can understand why we do this work and what it means to be an advocate for animals.
So I know that we're a little over on time, but we did have a couple questions in the chat that I at least want to reach those if we can. So we've got Charlie asked, when a pet is adopted for Michigan Humane, is there a follow-up team? And if so, how long is the follow-up?
Do you want me to take that, Ashley?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So we do not currently have a follow-up team that follows and tracks a Michigan Humane animal to call out and reach to an adopter at this time. It's something we used to have, and resources were tight, and it's something that we went away from. We didn't like the program the way it was. Most of it was redirecting people to things to read on our website, which we do still have. But this is part of that adoption process that happens. So all of our adoption counselors make sure that they are letting adopters know that if they have any questions, any troubles, whatever it might be, no question is too small or too big, they can call, reach our 1-866-MHUMANE number and speak with a representative. So again, maybe the call center representative isn't going to have that whole conversation, but once they get the story, they'll reach out to a manager, or they'll reach out to a member of our behavior team. So if someone needs assistance, they're really encouraged to do that at the time of adoption. We're also hoping to build this program back up. That's definitely a goal of ours, especially as we adopt out more challenging animals that are going to need follow-up care afterwards, whether that's medical or behavioral, that we have a more robust program. We are doing it in some regards already for, like, example, like dogs that go home with heartworm treatment or cats with special medical conditions. Those animals we do follow up with because they have certain appointments that we will cover vet care for them after time of adoption. So we're doing it a little bit, but we want to get better at it.
Another question that we have from Lynn, are we still accepting volunteer candidates? So yes, we are. Our applications are back on the website, and they are open for general volunteering. Currently, we don't have them open for community service or group volunteering. We're kind of handling those still on the side when they come to us. But yes, we are open for volunteers, and I can tell you that I have done about 200 applications since we opened them like a week ago. So we are working on it. We are definitely never low on applications. It's more or less us trying to find the right fit for volunteering. Sometimes it might be with our hours, or it might be just the different roles that we have, or maybe sometimes it's just not a good fit with what they're looking for versus what we can offer. But we definitely have a lot of interested people, and we're trying to get them in as soon as possible. So yes, we are ready for new people. Any other questions in here?
And then the only other thing I wanted to add is, I forgot to mention this when I was talking about open adoptions, but just because we do open adoptions doesn't mean we don't ever make a decision to decline an adopter. If we really felt a situation was not right or good for the animal, or there were ill intentions of an owner, our adoption counselors are trained to get a manager involved at that point, and a manager can make the call to decline someone from adopting. It's rare. Most times we're trying to redirect them to a different animal, so they're not declined to adopt, but maybe not this one. We'd recommend this type of animal, but there are some cases where there's true cruelty and neglect, or someone has, adopted and returned several animals or brought an animal back in, poor condition, and we had conversations, and then there's questions to be that maybe this person shouldn't be someone adopting animals in the future. So managers would have those conversations, and we would not notate that in our system where we track all animal outcomes and adopters. There's always a person in an animal record for every animal and person that comes into our facilities. Well, I should say a person that adopts, surrenders, does some sort of interaction with our facilities. So I just wanted to point that out because I didn't want anyone to think open adoption means that there aren't times when that does have to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Any other last minute questions?
Okay, so Lynn has a question about the punch cards. So we do have punch cards that are available for anyone who would like to participate. You do not have to, with our Humane Communities Resolutions program, which is what we're doing right now. These monthly virtuals that we're offering some education for you guys. The punch card is on an honor system, so it's up to you to just kind of keep track of your own. You're welcome to punch them yourselves. You're welcome to put stickers on them, whatever you would like to do. I know some people come in and ask staff, and outside of our team, I don't think they fully know that we're offering that program. And they were a little confused, but it is by the honor system. So just yourself tracking whether you've attended in person or whether you watched the recordings afterward. And then toward the end of the year, anybody who has done that with us for 8 of these, so we have 12 across the whole year, but we're only counting up for 8 that have completed being a part of these. You will be able to get kind of a special experience. We're kind of pull everybody together and pick somebody to be a part of a special experience, which we are not announcing yet. It's going to be a little bit of a surprise until later in the year, and hopefully get some people to watch these. But we're going to have something special for people who have wanted to expand their knowledge of the things that we do and help us reach this Humane Communities goal. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut. That's the last question we have. But before we do go, I did want to say we were hoping to have a little bit more time at the end to hear some stories from anybody who maybe has been worked with the community at one of our events or one of our pet food distributions. We really would love to hear some of those experiences. I know you guys have them because I saw some of them in the Facebook group recently of you guys saying that you love the adoption event and that you were really excited about it. Please, if you do have a story or just a thought about any of those, please feel free to send those to me at aray@michiganhumane.org. We would love to share out those testimonials for different people who maybe want to know a little bit more about the events and how they're making an impact in the community. So please feel free to type those up. They can be as long as you would like, and email them over to me because we do want to hear about them. We were hoping to get a couple in today, but we'd love to hear those. And with that, Jen, do you have anything else before we head out?
No, next time I just won't talk as much so we can hear from you guys too.
You guys know we like to talk too much.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. I hope you found this information helpful, useful. We'll also include a little survey afterwards so you can kind of rate the content because we want to continue to do these and make these better and better for you guys. So have a great evening. Thank you.
Guys. Have a great day. Right. But he's leaving. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.